Hello everyone, it's MeNoHaxor. In this video we're going to go over a full game of Lulu from start to finish. I think Lulu in this current meta is going to be very strong, given that AD carries are starting to build Infinity Edge, and so a lot of the crit AD carries like Jinx, Tristana, Draven, Caitlyn, Vayne are going to start making a comeback. And Lulu is the best enchanter when it comes to this kind of meta because she's really good at enabling her AD carry, and she has a pretty strong laning phase against a lot of the melee supports that tend to be meta. So usually the first thing I do is check the bot lane matchup before the lane starts. It's a Jinx, Tristana, and Braum, Lulu. Jinx and Tristana are relatively even in lane. I think Tristana has a little bit of an edge over Jinx because with her rocket jump, she can always jump in and out of fights. After we give a leash, we start heading to lane. The first thing you want to do as soon as you get to lane is to see whether the enemy AD carry gave a leash or not. Since we know that the enemy bot lane showed up late, we know that Nunu started bot side, and because we arrive a little bit earlier, I'm going to start walking to this bush and start throwing Qs and auto attacks. As an enchanter, it's really important to use this bush to your advantage and force them to use a trinket ward here. As you can see, the Jinx is now forced to use a trinket ward, and I'm going to start backing off a little bit more since this bush is warded. And forcing a trinket ward like this just by stepping in and out and applying pressure is really good because it prevents the enemy from using their wards for the river for incoming ganks. Now I'm going to keep on hovering close to them because I know my level 1 is much stronger than them, and we're also about to hit 2. So I'm just going to keep on harassing with Qs and autos and just keep pushing them back. One of the trinket wards we placed earlier does spot the Nunu, so we're going to start walking up and collapse on him. The reason why we can do this is because we started shoveling the lane already, and now we have lane priority. What lane priority means is that since we have the lane pushed against the enemy bot lane, we can be the first people to move in when we want to close in on an enemy that we see out of position, like their jungler. If we want to go check out their river to see if Scuttle Grab is taken, it pretty much opens up the opportunity for us to dictate the pace of the game by letting us take the first course of action rather than having us to play reactionary. Since we pushed the lane, we both hit level 2 and we're going to start walking up. The Jinx and the Braum sees us walking up, but they can't follow us because they're still level 1. And if they want to fight us 3v3, they're going to 100% lose because we're already level 2 and they're level 1. So they don't really have a choice in this situation except to try to push the lane back to 2 as soon as possible and then either join us or keep on shoving the wave. In this case, they're just going to try to freeze the wave a little bit. Meanwhile, because we got the shove, the Zoe also has lane priority against Kassadin, and we're able to collapse in on the Nunu and secure us first blood, and I also get red buffs from that. With the red buff, I have a pretty strong lead in this lane now. Even though Tristana used her summoner spells to secure the first blood, because I have red buff, my auto attacks are going to be doing way more damage in harassing in lane, and I have a lot of HP regen, so I can continue to apply poke and pressure in this lane matchup. I'm going to keep auto whenever I can, keep throwing out keys whenever I can, and slowly start to back off and kite as necessary. I'm okay with taking slightly worse trades just because with my red buff regen, I know that I can out-sustain them in the long run. So as long as we keep taking slow trades over time, we'll eventually get to the point where we have enough pressure where they have to back off, and then we can take some turret plating gold, or we can choose to recall favorably. As we close to the turret, I'm going to start autoing the turret, and I try to throw a Q and back off immediately. I do this because if my Q happens to damage either Jinx or Braum, I need to be out of turret range in order to avoid taking a turret auto. Because if you take the turret auto, you're not really winning that trade to begin with. And as this lane is pushing, I'm going to keep trying to auto the creeps as much as possible, so that way Tristana can help push the lane sooner and we can keep on applying pressure and get our first turret plating. We see the Nunus coming here. Jinx puts some really nice traps down, so I do have to flash over the traps towards the top right. Meanwhile, once I realize Tristana is dead, I have to start backing off so that way I don't transfer red buff back to the enemy team. Because I'm just walking back on my own, I am able to get within my turret range safety and I do end up living. It was a pretty close exchange, we almost got the Jinx, but it's okay that Tristana died. Once I recall, I'm going to buy a Frostfang, Dark Seal, Boot, and refillable potions. I like taking Dark Seal in matchups where I know I can dictate the pace of the lane and matchups where I know I can start snowballing. With the combination of Dark Seal and Refillable Potion, I'll have a lot more pressure in lane, and I can continue to continuously use my lead well by buying the Dark Seal. In terms of skill ordering, I do like to put a couple extra points in the E for the harass and shielding in lane, but after 3 points in the E, I don't like to put any more points in, and instead I like to max W. I like to max W first because if you go the route of putting 3 points in the E and then maxing W afterwards, you can then get W maxed at level 10, which is around the time when you start team fighting. And having the extra duration and polymorph is much more useful than the extra damage and shielding you can get from E, in my personal opinion. Now that we're back to lane, I'm going to start harassing them continuously once again, using my shield to negate as much damage as I can, and using my Q to slow them down while always autoing. Every time they're slowed, you always want to make sure you're throwing in autos as much as you can, because Lulu's autos tend to be very painful for the enemy. And note how we're applying so much pressure because we have really nice ward coverage. We put a couple trinket wards alongside the possible avenues that Nunu can gank us, and Zoe has done a really nice job of covering wards in case of a Kassadin roam. So Tristana and I know that we're incredibly safe to keep on applying pressure without any fear of being ganked. And I've also poked the Braum enough to the point where I know they can't all-in us anymore, so I'm really okay with taking very, very strong trades if it means that we can keep swapping health, because the Braum is too chunked to fight. Now that I have my quest finished, I'm going to look to try to get a ward in the Dragon Pit. I want to put a ward in the Dragon Pit just because I'm playing against the Nunu, and Nunu tends to do Dragon fairly early on. So definitely feel free to adjust where you put your wards depending on the jungler matchup. I do see there's a pink in this bush, so I don't want to even bother trying to contest it because I don't know where the Nunu is. And once again, we don't have lane priority, so I want to make sure that we have the lane priority first and get the wave shoving. And once we have the wave shoving, then Tristana and I can go together to safely clear that ward if we choose to do so. Here Tristana is 6, so I know we do have a level advantage if we choose a 2v2. Therefore, as this wave is coming in, I'm going to choose to force this fight really hard. Now that I've baited the enemy team in, the Tristana can jump in, and we're going to secure us a free kill onto Jinx, and then we're just going to back off immediately. Once again, I know I can only go for that very aggressive play with so much confidence because Tristana is level 6, and we have the burst damage necessary to kill the Jinx or the Braum. Plus, I've harassed them both low enough to the point where we can make that play. And I know that I'm relatively safe because Jinx and Braum do not have that much burst damage as champions. Now that the Jinx is dead, we're going to keep on pushing in the wave and hopefully get one more turret plating gold. I'll keep autoing the wave as we're pushing so that way we can push a little bit faster. And once we take their turret plating gold, we can just back off safely together. We do see the Nunus coming in, so we're going to start backing off. We also see the Zoes getting collapsed in on the side. However, assessing the situation, it's really risky for me to go in because they have a Kassadin. If the Kassadin sees me trying to help the Zoe, there's a very strong chance I'm going to die from Kassadin flash ult and Qing me. Therefore, I'm going to choose to recall even though I see that Zoe's in danger, and hope that she can just escape. Zoe ends up flashing over the wall and she ends up getting away, which is totally fine. Although it's good to keep in mind as a support that you should always be protecting your teammates, you generally have to assess the situation pretty quickly and evaluate whether it's worth risking your life to save a teammate, or if it's better just to back off and let your teammate die just in case there's a high chance you will die. I see the Zoe is fighting the Kassadin, so I'm going to start walking back and helping him out. I go for a polymorph so that he can land a max range Q for more damage. However, I am unable to save the Zoe in time, and now I have to start backing off because the Renekton is walking towards me. But since I have red buff, and I still have my ult, I'm not too afraid of him. With Tristana walking back in lane, I also don't want to push the lane, so I'm just going to let the lane slowly push towards back us, and put a ward over the wall here. Note that I put the ward over the tri-bush here because I know that this area is pink from before, So if I want to get vision of Nunu's incoming ganks, putting a ward over this wall like this is a very good way of getting the necessary information without having a ward being detected. Alternatively, I could place a ward over here on this side, which will also spot the Nunu if he chooses to walk from this side of the tri-bush. They do end up trying to collapse on me. I choose to flash because I was afraid the Braum was going to ult me. However, now that I see that Evelynn is here, I'm going to try to bait the Braum and the Jinx to come fight us. I do successfully bait them to fight us, and then as soon as Tristana jumps in with her W, I'm going to ult for the extra slow and we're going to secure us a kill. One thing to note in this exchange is that I made sure to be really patient with my Q and only use my Q to slow both the Braum and the Jinx when I know I can aim it to do so. Now that we secured the Braum kill, we're going to just keep on pushing in, and we should be able to get this bot turret pretty easily now that we have a red buff, Tristana has extra damage, and we do way more damage than before. I accidentally take an extra turret shot here, but luckily the Tristana is a really big homie and saves me from the Jinx ult by flashing to block it. Thanks, Tristana. I feel pretty confident she's going to be able to take the turret on her own, so I'm just going to go ahead and start recalling because I don't really see a point in staying there. I feel very confident she can get out, given that Braum doesn't have ult to initiate on Tristana. Now that the first turret's dead, the very first thing you should do is to always try to rotate to other parts of the map. Now that I have mobility boots and parts for Ardent Sensor, I think this is the perfect time to go rotate top lane. Zoe has a lot of pressure from mid, so I don't really see that much of a point in going mid unless we can collapse on the Kassadin and gank him. We do see the Kassadin does a pretty deep invade here, so I am going to try to get some harass here. We aren't able to kill him, but that's okay. I'm just going to start applying some vision around the area just in case the Kassadin wants to roam. I also see the Tristana decided to go back bot to catch the wave because we couldn't time the backs with Jax, which is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and get some deep vision for us, and then slightly hover mid and bot side in case any one of the sides needs my help. At this point in the game, the best thing I can do for my team is to keep track of where the jungler is, so that neither mid nor bot can get ganked. I'm just going to pop both drying orbs to deny them as much vision as possible, and then proceed to clear out any wards they have, as well as ward the rest of Nunu's camps so that we can always spot where he is. I see that Evelynn wants to go in for a gank on the Nunu, so I'm going to use my speed up and my E on her, and then save my ult for when the Nunu channels his ult, because the knockup from my ult will interrupt his ult and will prevent him from getting the full channel off. With Tristana's nice play, we are able to secure a kill on Nunu, and now we move mid. The reason why we can move mid now is because Kassadin doesn't have much wave clear for the Tristana to keep on pushing. So with that in mind, we're just going to group up and very heavily pressure this mid turret. The Jinx and Braum is forced to rotate because of their lack of wave clear, but it's really no match for Zoe's siege poke. So Tristana is able to get a free turret, and now we can start backing off and keep on applying our pressure elsewhere. Once again, it's really important to make sure that once you take the bot turret, you don't keep spending more time bot. You should only spend time bot if you need to shove the wave, and then you should proceed to rotate around the map to find opportunities to make plays elsewhere. In that scenario, we were able to find the pick on Nunu because Tristana and I were free to roam around the map first before the Jinx and Braum could get anywhere. Hence the term lane priority. I do have Ardent Sensor finished as well as some extra pink wards. I'm going to use one of my pink wards in the bush near Dragon because I know it's going to be spawning soon. And I'm going to also place one ward in the middle of the lane mid. I really like placing a ward right here in the middle of the lane because it's a really good way to spot the enemy mid laner for roaming around. Since Evelynn is doing her red and is not really going to go to Dragon anytime soon because she needs to clear her camps, I'm just going to hover around bot side and mid while I wait for my team to come help out with Dragon. Jax is in a 1v2, so I'm going to stay somewhat in the area, but I also see the Zoe could potentially get ganked, so I'm just going to stay in the area and just make sure that none of them could die before the Dragon starts. Plus, my ward all the way at Golems does spot the Nunu doing it, so we do know that he's there and no lane is in danger at the current moment. Therefore, I'm going to start heading my way towards bot because we saw the Nunu walked back up to the top left, so we know he can't be there for a counter gank just yet. I'm going to start walking down to help out the Jax, and Eve is going to follow shortly behind me. We get some pretty nice damage in, however, they do start to initiate back on us, and they're going to start channeling a TP to come in, so now we do have to retreat. I flash because I don't want to die to Jinx and give her a reset, meanwhile, we're just going to try to kite the Kassadin out. As soon as the charm ends on the Kassadin, I'm going to use my polymorph on him to keep on chain CCing him, and with the extra help from Zoe, we're able to secure 3 kills. I'm going to speed up the Zoe so that she can catch up to the fleeing Nunu, and we are going to secure a 4th kill for us. This is pretty well played on all our parts, but in general, when you teamfight as Lulu, you want to make sure that you're always staying relatively far back and polymorphing the important targets that can dive you guys. In that scenario, I knew the Kassadin was a very prime target for us because he's very potent at bursting any of us down. So I made sure to time my CC so that Kassadin could be CC'd for as long as possible, in addition to Evelyn's charm. One tip as Lulu is that with your Aerie, your W on allies will proc Aerie, and in this case, proc Ardent Sensor because of the shield. Therefore, if you're taking objectives, the best way to keep Ardent Sensor on your teammates as long as possible is to first apply your W so that your Aerie shield gets applied, and then you use your E. If you do it the other way around, your Aerie will get applied when you use your E, and if your Aerie hasn't returned back to you when you use your W, you're not going to get the shield from the W, and the duration of Ardent Sensor won't be applied. After finishing Ardent Sensor, I'm going to start working towards Redemption. I think Redemption is a very solid second item because it allows you to teamfight really well, and especially against the enemy team, most of these fights are going to take a pretty long time since the Nunu has to help kite and slow down people in order for Jinx and Kassadin to DPS them down. So having extra regen and extra health for the fight duration is going to be really helpful for us. As Eve is doing Rift Herald, I'm just going to make sure to ward on both entrances into the river, just in case Nunu might go in for a steal. Now that we secured Rift, I'm just going to place another one of my wards mid, and then I'm just going to recall. The reason why I started to recall was because I've used up all my wards and I didn't see a point in staying anymore. However, I see that Evelyn is fighting top, so I'm going to start walking up just in case she needs my help. However, I see the Renekton, so I'm just going to distract the Renekton so that he can't run to my Evelyn immediately, and then I'm just going to walk up and circulate back to my Evelyn just in case she needs me again. But she seems okay now. So instead I'm just going to get top wave slow pushing just a little bit, so that way if my team is fighting on the other side of the map, we have a slow push going that will slowly collapse in at their turret. Unfortunately, my Tristana does die because she overextends, so I'm just going to stay mid and make sure that the Zoe gets protected while she waves clear in case they push. However, now I see Jax is in danger of help, so I'm just going to make sure that Jax can get out safely, and then I'm just going to back off. At this point, we can't really do much because Tristan is dead, so now we feel safe to recall. So unlike the scenario at the very beginning of the game where I felt like I couldn't help out my team if I canceled my recall, in this scenario I did feel like I could help my team just because I can get to areas much more quickly with mobility boots. With our lead, we definitely want to keep on applying pressure as much as possible. In teamfights, I do want to stay behind Tristana as much as possible and have Zoe just continuously look for poke. So I do have to make sure to position myself as far away as possible from my team so that way multiple people cannot get CC'd by them. I also really need to make sure to save my ult for either when the Kassadin dives or when the Renekton dives, in order to protect them. A teamfight's about to start. They choose to initiate on us. As soon as the Renekton jumps on the Tristana, I'm going to make sure to time my ult to get the knock up on the Renekton so that he cannot go for the immediate stun and guarantee that Tristana can get the jump out. Because of that, the Tristana is able to start retaliating back with autos using my shields and Ardent Sensor, and we're going to slowly push back in on them and secure us the teamfight win. Since Zoe's zoning out the Kassadin, I'm just going to stick with the Tristana and make sure we start sieging the mid turret. They can't really do anything to us because they're getting heavily pressured by topside as well. And I'm just going to keep on buffing the Tristana and staying back, making sure that if anyone jumps on them, I can always Q whoever's incoming, since I'm usually using my W on Tristana for the extra movement speed and Ardent Sensor. As we're sieging, I also place one ward in the middle of the base here. This ward is pretty important because it allows us to see both the top side and the middle of their base, and since Jax is going to be pushing top side and we're going to be pushing mid, it's going to be really good to have vision on them when they rotate between the two lanes. The Jax does end up recalling, so we're going to choose to just back off for now. There isn't really a point in sieging when we don't have side pressure, so let's just go ahead and get out of here while we are still healthy and strong. I see that Evelynn is fighting the Kassadin over on the side, so I'm going to make sure I can get my ult off on the Evelynn in case the Kassadin goes for the flash ult. Meanwhile, I'm just going to keep on using my E on Tristana so that way she can just freely poke the enemy team. And now that we've killed the Kassadin, it's very easy for us to go do Baron. I'm just going to make sure to sweep the incoming area for any wards so that they can't get vision of us, as well as place a pink in the middle of the Baron pit. I'm also keeping an eye out on where Nunu is. However, we see Nunu is mid, clearing the wave with his team, so we know that there's no way that Nunu can go in for a steal. Plus we have all these wards covering the outside area, so we know exactly where Nunu is if he chooses to walk up to Baron. So this was a pretty easy Baron for us. And now to close out the game strong, we're just gonna go back to the same positioning we had before, with 4 of us mid and Jax split pushing top. With Baron buff, they don't really have a good answer, so as long as none of us get caught, we should be able to close this game out very easily. I'm once again just gonna play bodyguard, W whoever tries to engage on my team, or just use W on Tristana when she wants to go in for some poke and harass. I'd say in this scenario, it's fine to use W more for buffing Tristana, and using my ult just to cancel out whoever tries to dive in on Tristana, due to the enemy team comps they have. The only threat they really have is Renekton or Kassadin, so as long as I save my ult for whoever dives the Tristana, we should be good to go. And otherwise we can just continue sieging, and I can just keep buffing Tristana and we can slowly make our way into the base. As you can see, I'm once again staying right behind Tristana, always continuously buffing her, and we're just going to slowly take both top, mid, and then slowly start to work on the Nexus. I use Redemption here just to get us back up to full and to apply Ardent Sensor to multiple people on my team, and now we're just going to slowly kite them out and win this fight. With the teamfight won, we're just going to go ahead and win the game. So there are a couple key things to note in this Lulu game. One, it was important that I first recognized the bot lane matchup and whether or not I should play aggressively. Since I'm playing against a Jinx Braum lane as Tristana Lulu, I know that we have the upper hand in this lane, so I should be playing more aggressively because I know that it's very hard for the enemy bot lane to kill me. Therefore, with all the pressure we applied, we're able to continuously chunk the Braum and Jinx to the point where we can easily get kills on them, as well as get free gold plating because we were able to push so much for free. We also made sure that we had sufficient vision. Nunu was never really able to gank us that many times, and because we always knew where he was, we could always continuously apply pressure and get first turret for our team. Then once first turret fell, me and Tristana roamed around the map and made sure that we applied our pressure into other lanes outside of bot lane. We were able to take out mid really quickly, then Tristana went top while I helped out my team with securing more dragons, Rift Herald, Vision, and we were able to continuously snowball our lead to the point where we can get Baron very safely and win the game. In team fighting, it was really easy to peel for Tristana because they didn't have many diving champions, and as long as I just positioned myself pretty far away from Tristana, as long as I continuously applied Ardent Sensor with W and E on Tristana, and used my ult knockup on whoever dies her, there was really no way they could ever get to her, given their team comp. I hope you enjoyed this video, and definitely give Lulu a try. I think this game is a very good example of how you can use Lulu as a very aggressive enchanter in the lane, and then transition into a very nice bodyguarding support for your Infinity Edge AD carry.